The bone broth is being made from chicken legs because I bought them for 99 cents a pound. After I boil this down, I will debone these legs and put the bones back in, and then I will put the 2 whole chickens back in and add some water. And this is going to cook for 2 or 3 days. Inside here there is also a couple of onions, a couple of carrots, some celery, and salt and pepper. I'm going to add some more water, but water expands when it's heated, so I want to see where we're at once I get to a simmer. So there's actually 5 times 4, 20 chicken legs in here. Some of you might be interested to know this jug in Canada is a milk jug, and you put a bag of milk in this milk jug, a little bit more than a liter, I think 1 1/3 liters, because you buy the milk 3 bags and it's 4 liters. Anyway, I don't drink milk, so I'm just using it as a water jug. It smells so good already. Cooking food brings a lot to the senses, right? It's visual, but you smell it. My gosh, it smells so good. And you enjoy that and you appreciate it, right? But I'm gonna have a lot of bone broth here. You know, this bone broth, when I make it, I do it 3 days, like 72 hours. The broth is the essence of a good soup. And when the broth is made really well, it gels when it's cold. So that's what I'm going to be attempting to create. But gelled bone broth tastes strong. So I take that out, I add water, I add a little bit of kimchi, maybe little kimchi juice. I add some spinach, I add some zucchini, maybe sometimes I have some onions in the freezer, and I add some meat. And I also usually add some heavy whipped cream, and then salt and pepper, and I drop an egg into it also. It's just amazing. The core of it is the bone broth, and the rest of it is just like throwing in these things that I have prepped and ready in my freezer, and I can just have such a nourishing, amazing tasting meal. So after about an hour and a half or so, I took all this chicken out of this broth pot, and now I'm going to put in 2 chickens. Bird number 1. This bird was $10.19. So this is pretty excessive, I agree. So this, 4 chicken legs for $2.45. Time will tell if I've done something good here. When we're finished, you can evaluate the broth and tell me what you think. Oh, and while I was deboning, this pot overflowed. It is pretty full. There's 2 full chickens in there and 4 more chicken legs. Yum, 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 and it smells so good. So here we have it. The chicken has been deboned. I have 78.4 ounces of chicken. I have 68.18 ounces of bones, and another 2 whole chickens, and about 4 chicken legs to debone. We'll weigh them too. So I put the bones back in the pot. And what I have here is some apple cider vinegar, 1 cup. It's going in. Apparently it helps extract the goodness from the bone. So what I have here is 48 ounces of bones, 65.7 ounces of meat, I've never made such a big batch of bone broth. This is awesome. It's the morning of day 2 of my bone broth production. This has been simmering all night. It's important to find the sweet spot of temperature. You really don't want too much of a boil. In fact, this is a little bit more active than I would like, but you need to know your stove. I had it a bit lower last night and I just turned it up this morning for a while, and it's only on 1. And my temperature is showing me it's 210. Really, I would like it to be about 199, but I find this temperature gauge at 199, I'm not getting any activity. Now, this isn't a terrible situation. However, you don't want too much boil because then your bone broth may turn cloudy, especially when you're going for so many days. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to ladle off the fat, and there's no problem leaving the fat on even for 3 days of simmer. However, this fat is chicken fat, also known as schmaltz, and I want to keep it. It's properly rendered already, and it's great for cooking. It adds a lot of flavor for specific dishes, and I've been experimenting with that, and I really like it. I have schmaltz, tallow, and lard all rendered myself that I keep in jars in the fridge. So I don't need to take all of this fat off the top. However, I want to take a lot of it off because it needs to be done sometime, and it's just another thing done and out of the way. And actually, I don't think leaving the fat on is going to cause any problems to the taste or quality of my bone broth. However, it is possible that it may affect the taste and quality of the fat itself. I doubt it, actually. More realistically, I'm just doing this because, as I said, it needs to be done. I love the fat rendering process, and it's just nice to see how much I'm going to yield. You can also see all of the fat has floated to the top of this pot, all the chicken skin and all the bits and pieces of fat. Now that's all going to get strained at the end of this process. I'm almost at the end of pulling this fat off the top. I do like fat in my diet. I think animal fats are really ideal. However, doing this the way I've done it, boiling the chicken, gives me a source of protein without any fat in it, and then I can add back fat as I want for a calorie controlled diet. And now I'm going to show you how I separate the fat from the water. I'm still in my morning gear, so this piece of cheesecloth is going to go on top of this mason jar. I just push it in to create a nice well. This is an elastic, but I save everything. This is the elastic that comes on my broccoli spear or my broccoli heads. I save everything within reason, but if I have the space to keep it until I reach critical mass, why not? So I'm straining this through the cheesecloth into the mason jar. I've got my mason jar sitting inside of a stainless bowl, and I'm doing that just because if I have any spillage or overflow, I can control for that. So I have a bit of space. I'm going to ladle a little bit more fat in here. I have pretty much taken all the fat off the top. I won't do this process again because I don't even mind a little bit of fat in my bone broth. And I'm basically just going to fill up this jar as much as possible. And now I'm going to take this strainer off the top. You know, bone broth and fat is really sticky, so I try to keep things very clean. Even my, what is this called, ladle, is sitting on a cloth on my work table. So now I have this fat in this mason jar. The fat is on the top, the water is on the bottom, the lid is tight, and now I'm simply going to turn it over like this and let it cool. As you can see now, the fat is on the bottom of the jar and the water is on the top. So when this solidifies in the fridge, I can open the top and pour the water, bone broth, back into my pot. Very simple and effective. It's late afternoon on the second day of my bone broth production. What I'm doing now is removing the carrots. I'm just afraid that at some point they will begin to disintegrate. There is a lot of bones in here. I noticed that when I took the fat off, it changed my temperature settings, and I'm still trying to find the sweet spot on the dial, which is almost 0. And when I turn it up a wee bit to get a little bit more activity, it just seems to be too much activity. And then when I turn it down, it doesn't seem to be enough activity. So I'm trying to find the sweet spot. It's still good. This is really cool, guys. Remember the schmaltz, the chicken fat I took off the top of the pot? This is the jar. I had it upside down, remember? So there's the air space in the bottom. And I thought I would just pour off the bone broth off the top, but look how gelled it is. This is exactly what you want bone broth to do. This was just last night in the very beginning stages of making my bone broth, and it's gel. Let's get a spoon and look at that. Look at that. It's not as developed yet as it will be by the time I'm done, but that's incredible already. So what I've done here is I've skimmed off all the floating bits at the top, all of the chicken skin, little pieces of meat or fat that floated to the top. And now I will commence the straining of the bone broth, the final step. So here I have another pot and a colander lined with cheesecloth, so I can get a nice, clean, and pure bone broth. So now here we are ladling with a Pyrex container. I'm probably going to, my bone broth, my cheesecloth is falling down inside the colander a little bit. So I'll probably do this a couple of times. So I'm going to ladle some of this out. That will make the pot, the large pot, a lot more manageable if I want to pour the last bits out. This pot is full of bones. Now I can just put this inside here. I can take this off. And I can take what I've strained already and put it right into some containers. I have a couple of small jars to give some bone broth to my mom. She's awesome, 86, still thriving and well. She likes to make bone broth. She's given me some, so I'd like to give her some back. To be honest, as much as I love my mom, I don't want to give my bone broth away because it's just so awesome and I enjoy it so much. But this bone broth that we're making is going to be so much more concentrated, so much thicker than the bone broth I've made before. I used to think, oh, just add some water and I'll have more bone broth, but it doesn't make sense because I can store it more concentrated and add the water there. So a tub like this, I can make soup with that, add a bunch of things to it. It'll fill a small pot and it's basically 2 big full cups of soup. It's actually a serving of 2, so I can eat it all in one day, almost 2 meals, or I can eat it over 2 days. So this is what's left. These bones just crumble. They just disintegrate. So I knew I didn't have to cook it any longer. Well, I learned something that's worth noting. My bone broth stopped going through the cheesecloth. The particles were clogging it right up and it just wasn't straining. So I decided to pre-strain it through a strainer without the cheesecloth. And I have a lot of fine particles. I'm going to now strain it again through a cheesecloth, but maybe not 3 or 4 layers, maybe just 1 layer is sufficient. So here we have the final results of production. This is my beautiful bone broth. It's cooling before I put lids on it. What do I have? I have 8 units of 3 cups. I have 2 units of 4 cups. These little jars are about 1 1/3 cup. They're going to my mom. These packages are meat, cooked and frozen. This is 26 ounces of white breast meat. These are all, this one's 37 ounces. The other 2 are 30 ounces. I can take from these bags and put it into bone broth when I'm eating it, or I can fry it in some schmaltz or something like that and add it to a salad. It's just awesome. So what I have here is a final analysis. The project cost $35.49. I used 6 packages times 4 legs, so I used 24 chicken legs and then 2 whole chickens. The 24 chicken legs cost $15.26. The 2 whole chickens cost $20. So if I did the whole thing with just chicken legs, I would have done it for a lot cheaper. Anyway, this cost me $35.49, and I got 7.68 pounds of cooked meat. And I got the bones for free, essentially. You know, this project looks like it took more time, perhaps, but it's because I bought meat. And I took the meat off the bones first, and now I've got the meat. So I have 34.5 cups of bone broth, and 123 ounces or 7.68 pounds of cooked meat for $35.50. I'm very pleased with that. I think that's just awesome. If you enjoyed my video and you found it useful or beneficial, show me some love, give me a little bit of encouragement, give me a thumbs up, even a comment. I read them all and I appreciate it and I enjoy it. And as always, love yourself, stay safe, be awesome.